I believe we're obligated to strive to be the best that we can be. I don't think it's an option. Let's put it this way. I don't think to strive to be the best that we can be is an option. I think it's an obligation. I don't think when you go to practice anything other than to leave it all out there is an option. Morally speaking, I'm not speaking in cliches or quotes here. I'm speaking morally. I don't think it's an option, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why, and this will get away a little bit from the point. It's like this, okay, so there's psychological literature that strongly suggests that to the extent that you don't self-actualize, meaning that you don't reach your full potential, or at least, when I say reach your full potential, I mean strive to reach your full potential. To the extent that you don't strive to reach your full potential, because the striving to reach your full potential is actually the actualization. There's a link or a correlation between the extent of which you don't strive to reach your full potential and bitterness, resentment, and jealousy. So you can imagine that to the extent of which you don't strive to reach your full potential is the extent of which you'll experience, psychologically speaking, technically speaking, bitterness, resentment, and jealousy. And to be bitter and resentful is one thing, but to be jealous is even more dangerous. It's because when you're jealous, you might actively find yourself acting as not just a disengaged person, but an actual, well, you might find yourself cheering on the failure of others. And that's a very dangerous place to be, and that's not how we better the world. That's why I say it's a moral obligation. And it's like this. It's like, okay, so we know that there's a link between lack of self-actualizing. You guys know what I mean when I say that, right? Lack of striving to reach one's full potential. There's a link between that and bitterness, resentment, and jealousy. It's like bitterness, resentment, and jealousy, negative emotions. Life is difficult fundamentally. We spoke about that. You have to understand that life is difficult and it'll throw a lot of things along our ways. We'll experience a lot of tragedy and difficulties over the course of our life. We have to be prepared for that. And we have to accept that that's a reality. And when you do, right, if you do, or when you do, you have to ask yourself, okay, it's already difficult. Like, the journey's already difficult, right? You can imagine it like this. To be a great tennis player, like to be an amazing tennis player is going to be filled with more difficulty than it is going to be filled with ease. Of course, how could that not be, right? The higher in the difficulty of the challenge, the more difficulty that you'll face. So you can expect difficulty along your road to actualization or self-actualization. You can expect difficulty. You don't want to add on top of that difficulty bitterness and resentment and jealousy. It'll just add on to the difficulty. It'll make an already difficult journey more difficult. What you want to do is you want to mitigate the suffering. How can you mitigate the suffering? How can you turn negative emotion to positive emotion? And we spoke about that technically. How do we experience positive emotion? You experience positive emotion. Most of the positive emotion you experience in your life comes in relation to making progress towards a goal. What is to make progress towards the goal? That's the self-actualization process. So this is where I say you don't experience positive emotion. There's two types of rewards. There's consumatory and there's incentive. Consumatory is not long lasting. Incentivized rewards are. That's what positive emotion progress towards relation and the goal is. It's an incentivized reward, which is more fulfilling, meaningful, and long lasting. Okay, so that positive emotion counters or mitigates the difficulty of the journey. And so again, I speak on like you can't view to strive to be the best versions of yourself as an option. You have to view it in some ways as an obligation. Every day I put my best foot forward. That has to be a personal contract you make with yourselves. And why am I laying this all out like this? Because I want you to understand why it's an obligation, not an option. And you can mitigate the suffering of the journey through positive emotion. We've spoken about this. There's analgesic properties, meaning pain relieving properties, neurochemically speaking, through positive emotion. So you actually relieve pain, and that's where we talked about the example in maybe 5 sessions ago about if you watch people that are most likely to survive extremely hard or difficult journeys, you'll see something that's very common in them, and that's a sense of humor. So interesting, the literature on this. A good sense of humor. Why? What is to have a good sense of humor? It's to play, positive emotion, analgesic. It's analgesic in its nature. So what you're trying to do is experience positive emotion to manage the difficulty of the journey. What is the main way we experience positive emotion? Making progress towards our goal. I mean, if you just want the journey to be overbearing and overwhelming and nothing but disappointment and to seep into different parts of your lives, it's like, go ahead. Don't strive to make everything in front of you as great as it can be. And see how that works out. It's not going to work out. The only option you have when you view it in this way and you lay out the foundation is to literally leave it all out there in the best positive, productive way every single moment of every day. Okay, are we following? Raise your hand if we're following. Okay. Okay, so this goes into my next point here. In every room that you have control over, you should place a beautiful painting in it. When you one day become, hopefully, homeowners, in every room, I hope that you would see the point in putting a painting in it. Why? Why? Well, do you want to be somebody who's somebody that in every room he or she steps into makes it a little bit more beautiful? And what would that mean for you and the world if you became somebody who in every walk or room of the earth made it a little bit more beautiful? What would that mean? You would then be somebody everywhere they go makes their situation or the circumstance around them better. You know, there's a saying, and this is why, again, I really want you guys to read more and try to educate yourselves on history. It's like, okay, so there was this a Medal of Honor recipient. He said this famous quote. It's that all it takes for evil to take over is for good people to sit back and do nothing. What will happen to the room over the years if you don't beautify it? You'll see dust form, start to degrade. The paint will kind of peel off. Like, that's what happens if people who have the ability to make things more beautiful sit back and do nothing about it. And so that in some ways is the degradation of, in a metaphorical sense, of when you expand on it, the world. And it's unbelievable. One little act of positive encouragement in relation to the world makes such a bigger difference than you could ever imagine. It's like, why? Why does what you do, even on a small scale, matter? Well, okay, we can imagine that the average person is connected to 1,000 people over the course of their lives. And so one of my 1,000 is Owen. But then Owen's connected to 1,000. And then one of Owen's thousands are connected to 1,000. And faster than you think, you could rapidly impact humanity by your small little action. Like, if I can encourage Owen to beautify the world, and if he could encourage one more person, and if that one more person, it's like, you don't know the network that expands to over the course of time. So if you view it in this lens, we all can make a difference. Some people take a more nihilistic approach. It's like, well, what does anything I do matter? What does it matter if I just throw my wrapper on the ground? It's just one piece of litter. It's like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. Okay, but to keep my focus here, it's, what would happen to your life if you were somebody who, in every room they set foot in, found a way to make it more beautiful? Like, and that could be not, I'm just using a painting as an example. It could be, to dust off the shelf, or to, pick up a piece of clothing off the floor. Can you be somebody everywhere they go, they make it a little bit better? And the beautifying of the room is just a metaphor, okay? Can you go into a team or a training environment and make it a little bit better? You could do that through your attitude. You could do that through your work ethic. You could do that to your body language. Can you go to school and make the classroom a little bit better? That could be through, encouraging a classmate, or listening better, giving more respect to the teacher. Like, what would happen to your life and the opportunities that would just pour into it if you became somebody that was in a habit of everywhere they went, they made that place a little bit better? I could tell you what could happen. Faster than you think, life would open its doors up to you in ways you never imagined, in pathways you never imagined. The pathway to potential or actualization isn't always obvious. It's not always obvious. In fact, most of the time it's not obvious. You think you're going somewhere and it takes you on a different journey, but so long as you're somebody who makes, or who attempts to make, everywhere they go a slightly better, you'll end up in a good place. And you have to have trust in that. And that's an axiom of faith, right? That's an axiom of faith. But we have to operate this world with that axiom, because, well, what's the alternative? Nihilism? Well, we know that's just negative emotion, which just makes our journey more sufferable. This is why you have a moral obligation to be the best person you can be. And you have a moral obligation, or an obligation, to make every room you set foot in slightly better. Because we know what the alternative leads to. And we have to be proactive about that. It's like, you're born with privilege. You have a good heart. Use it. Don't sit back. Don't sit back. Impact. That's to actualize your potential. Okay. Obviously went through a lot here. I want to go into breakout rooms and let you guys all discuss.